Hey, all. Thank you once again for joining us. We are going to get this kicked off. My name is Evan Brenner. I'm the digital content specialist here at Geographic Solutions. I hope that you can hear, and if you can, please raise your hand in the chat panel. That would be great for me to see. I think I see some hands raised here. Yes, sorry, great, fantastic. All right, thank you so much. I am so excited that you're here today and joining us about the Pathway series. So we've been having this series for a couple of actually years now, and we have covered everything from entrepreneurship to the gig economy. We have covered trends in disability employment, apprenticeships, youth engagement. Most recently, we had a session on behavioral nudges with Maria Smith, who joined us from Australia. So today we are going to be covering the state of reentry, and we have a fantastic panel lined up. We hope that you're going to learn something new, take away a best practice, answer at least one of your burning questions. And we are Geographic Solutions. We're headquartered in Palm Harbor, Florida, but we have a national and international presence. Over 450 folks are working here full time, and part time we have apprenticeships and internships as well. A little bit of housekeeping. I would like to have everybody ask questions and go ahead and just ask them throughout the presentation. If there's a really good question that pertains to a certain aspect of the presentation, we can go ahead and cover it then. But for the most part, we will go ahead and cover these at the end of our presentation in the question and answer part. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists. Rainisha Perry from Career Source Palm Beach County, Stacy Books from Persevere, Augie Gildarducci, Chief Operating Officer and President at Second Opportunity, and Melanie Norris, who is the Career Compass Program Manager at the Wyoming Department of Workforce Services. Before we get started, I would like to go ahead and do a poll. For this Slido poll, I'd like you to go ahead and name a few skills that are in demand for folks that are reentering the workforce. Add your choice and it will appear in this word cloud here. So we simply will take our phones, and I'm going to give folks a moment or two to just go ahead and answer, put in their answers. And if you don't have a phone handy, you can always go to slido.com and add that poll number. While we're doing that, I just wanted to thank, everybody for joining from where they are, but Augie is actually traveling, so thank you for joining from your hotel room. And Stacy also is joining us from mobile. So I think that's super cool that everybody just kind of, thank you so much for dropping what you're doing and taking some time to be with us here today. So side note, as some of the answers are coming in here, I think some of the cool things to see are communication, CDL, soft skills. I think that's huge in a lot of different workforce programs. So let's just give folks maybe one more minute to put their answers in, and then we'll get started with the program. All right, so we're going to get started. And the first question I want to ask is about motivation. So Augie, starting with you, could you just tell us or just share a little bit about what motivates you to do what you do? Just expand upon that and just tell us how you assist those who are returning to the workforce.
The organization is called Second Opportunity, and we work both on the inside and the outside, helping prepare for employment readiness and other life skills, financial literacy. And I do what I do because I was incarcerated for 13 years. So I understand well the journey that is. And I think employment is certainly a major factor in it. I would say that outside of the health and safety of my family, the number one concern, the thing that would wake me up at night while I was locked up is who's going to hire me? How am I going to be able to pay my bills and take care of my responsibilities? And I think that that's one of the real motivators I have, is to continue to not only work with those that are reentering, but to speak with employers to maybe raise awareness that there's a terrific pool of talent that's incarcerated that's going to be looking for opportunity when they release.
Thank you, Augie. And to Melody. Melody, what motivates you to do what you do on a daily basis and to assist folks who are returning to the workforce?
Before I started working in workforce services, I actually worked in corrections for 12 years. That was a really eye-opening experience, especially from a young age. And one of the old directors that I worked for, he always said offenders come to prison as punishment, not to be punished. And that really stuck with me, right? That was pretty impactful for me to hear, because prison is an opportunity to be rehabilitated. And so for me, when I think about that and the statistic of over 95% of offenders release, that means it's everyone's job to be part of reentry. And I have to think about that in my own job and how I interact, and what I bring to the table is we really do need to make that a priority, because reentry is, it takes a village for everyone to get out and to be successful when they release. So for me, working in prison really helped me see that there's those that need a second chance. And now working for workforce services, I have an opportunity to partner with corrections and really make an impact on those that need it most.
Thank you, Melody. And Stacy, I'd like to just ask you the same question. What motivates you to do what you do on a daily basis?
I am just like Augie. I was impacted by the justice system. And while I was serving time in the Tennessee Department of Corrections, I really paid close attention to the women that was around me. And I saw a lot of codependency. I saw a lot of trauma. I saw individuals that lacked not only education, but work experience. And so while I was there, I kind of had that moment. I always tell individuals it's when God just told me to kind of sit down and be quiet for a couple of years. And during that time, I had decided that I was going to take my education and my previous work experience and give back. So I was provided a second chance through an individual who was also impacted by the justice system. And so together, we built out a program. His vision was to teach software development to individuals that were impacted by the justice system. Mine was to teach workforce development. But it was also to kind of expand the program beyond that. So Persevere not only teaches individuals behind the wall, but we also teach individuals in the community, and we also teach their children. When I was released from prison, one of the biggest, one of the main reasons I was successful was because of the family reunification with my daughter. And so we find that our participants, they need that same family reunification. So now their children and them are speaking a language they've never spoke before. And then providing case management and that mental health, because like myself, until I got my mental health under control, nothing else mattered. It didn't matter what job I had or how much money I made. And so for me, it's extremely personal. And today I'm sitting outside of one of our state facilities where we're implementing a new program. And so it's nice to be able to be part of that difference.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacy. And I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about your story and your motivation. And Renisha, I'd like to also ask you, what motivates you? What helps you to keep going day to day?
What helps me to keep going day to day, what motivates me is I come from a law enforcement background as well, and I've seen different aspects from adults to children being incarcerated. And I love the fact that when they get out, a lot of them don't have hope that they can succeed, and to actually see the process through and to see them become successful in different fields, and to know that the sky is still the limit and you made a mistake. Because I've come to find out that it's harder for them to forgive themselves than for what's going on with society, how society feels about them. And to get them to believe in themselves. And once they believe in themselves and you get everything in order that they need to see, just to see where my clients are. I have clients that have bought houses and sent me pictures and said, Miss Perry, you said I can do this, just to see them succeed in different arenas, that things are opening up. They don't have to stay in one field, just to see them, even some become my community partners that have started their own organization for reentry. So to see that and to see the impact on lives, and to have even their wives and families to come back and thank you for the work that you have done, and thank you for putting in time with my significant other, my husband, my wife. That's why I do what I do. And I love when they succeed in the areas. I love when they've heard no, or they thinking no, and there's a yes around the corner. That's why I do what I do.
Renisha, thank you for sharing that. And I love to hear that you know, folks are reaching out to you and thanking you. And I think that's really great. And I just, you know, I appreciate what you do. I want to go to the next question. And we talked a little bit about this in our practice and our dry run for this session. In your opinion, what are, and it doesn't even have to be in your opinion, but with your experience, with your based on your insight, what are 3 of the biggest challenges for reentry? And these can be, you know, similar. We can all kind of have a discussion about this and cross discuss. And I'd like to start just going left to right from my screen with Augie. So Augie, please let me know, what do you see as the biggest 3 challenges for reentry now, and then maybe going through 2024?
So I learned the term, the economic empowerment model. And basically it says that you can't have stable housing without stable employment, and you can't have stable employment without stable housing. And I think that's about as direct as it gets. So those would be 2 of the things. I will say that my experience and my observation is that stable housing is a far greater challenge than finding employment. But even if I get a good job, if I don't have the housing that allows me to show up on time and to, you know, have my meals and that type of thing. And the third thing, and you know, this is a struggle too, and that's, I think that when we release, we have to be willing to ask for help, because there are so many things that have changed. I mean, for me, technology, I had never seen a smartphone. I hadn't been on a computer in 13 years, and I got a job, and the first day they said, just set up your LinkedIn account. And I was absolutely lost. And there was a woman in the office who took mercy on me and helped me to establish it. So I think we have to be willing to raise our hand to say that I need some help with this, or I'm feeling overwhelmed by this, and find that support system that can help guide us in those moments.
Thank you, Augie. And it's definitely the thing about LinkedIn that's impactful, that, you know, coming back and thinking about social media as a way to connect. It's definitely an interesting thing to think of. Melody, what about you? What are 3 challenges, or just a few challenges, that you see in your day to day that are challenges for reentry?
Yeah, similar to Augie, when we look at our reentry efforts in Wyoming, our top 3 are going to be employment, housing, and transportation. If you're not familiar with Wyoming, I mean, we have less than 600,000 people in the state, and we're pretty rural. So there's a lot of space between towns. I know when I first moved to Wyoming, I lived in a town without a Walmart, and that was really eye-opening that I had to drive an hour and a half just to get there, right? So when we release offenders, and we release those that are justice involved, we have to think about that. How are they going to have access not only to maybe a grocery store or bigger chains or things like that? We have to think about those same necessities, whether it's mental health, whether it's access to the Department of Family Services, our services. So those are big challenges that we see across the state. With us being so rural, we don't have public transit that goes across the state. So even releasing an offender sometimes can be a challenge, just getting them to their home. So once we get them there, again, these are things that I think from the regular standpoint of the public, it's easy to think that's not a big barrier, right? Like, I've never not had a car, I've never not had a home, but these are huge pieces to that reintegration into society. As Augie said, you know, employment and housing, those are big pieces to being able to be successful. And we're seeing that in our own state. I think it was Stacy that also mentioned about mental health. I know that's a 4th one for us, but that's a big piece too, because even in rural Wyoming, in our communities, we don't have enough mental health providers. We don't have enough access to that. So on top of already having that as a challenge, it's even harder to get those that are justice involved to those resources.
Thank you, Melody. And Stacy, I know, you know, in having our pre-discussion before this event, we had talked about some challenges. Some of the things that you had mentioned, I believe, were HR policies and stuff along those lines. So, you know, based on our conversation and your insight, what are 3 challenges that you see for reentry?
You know, I have to agree with what Augie and Melody said. It was interesting when we started our program in 2019 and we started working with the individuals. One of the first things that we did was open a transition home, because we had individuals being released from prison that said, I don't know where I'm going, and when they release me, I'm going to be homeless. And some of them, that's all they've ever known. And so we wanted to make sure that they had a safe and secure place, because without a safe and secure place, employment's not going to matter. And as time went on, some of the other challenges that we faced was sobriety and the mental health. And of course, the two of those go hand in hand. And we did a survey with our participants, and what we found was mental health and recovery were kind of at the top, because without that under control, then it didn't really matter if they had a place to live or a job, because they didn't care about paying their bills. They didn't care about going to work. And so we tried to include that in that wraparound service. And then, of course, with housing, even with myself, I was convicted 20 years ago, and I can buy a home, but I can't rent one. And so that is a huge struggle. And so we push people back into the same communities that they were in previously, because that's the only place they can find housing. And it doesn't matter how much money you make or what your job is or how long you've been there or what your credit score is. That conviction holds you back from finding housing. And then, of course, there's the employment barrier, right? We all know there are HR policies and policies that surround insurance that prevent employers from hiring individuals with a background. And then transportation. I mean, I know that's four, but when we really look at it, all of those combined is together is it's a major barrier to success.
Thank you, Stacy. And Renisha, in Palm Beach, and very much Palm Beach is, or Florida for the state. What are some challenges that you're seeing for reentry?
For reentry, some of the challenges I am seeing, housing is an issue, but I can say it's a big issue, but not a really big issue that I'm seeing in the area that I'm focusing. I'm very thankful for the community, the reentry community that we have here, and I'm thankful for being able to go to when we have events and we sit down with the community from different agencies and talk about, hey, this is a barrier, and that things are starting to open up. Like even with Section 8 with housing, they're starting to open up to receiving people with backgrounds. So it's certain, and we know there are some backgrounds that they don't accept. So I can see where we're making progress with housing. And then there's different ways to funnel in different people into getting housing so that I can be able to help them get employed. But the main issues that I'm seeing from an employment standpoint is skills, like skills they need for a job, because I've learned that private prison and state prison is different. Private prison seems to be the more advanced at the guys and the women getting out with certification and having the skills that they need. State prison needs to advance more in that area. Also education. And education is sometimes, I've come to find out, it's not that they don't have a GED, and sometimes it's not that because they didn't try to take it in prison. What happens is because they move from prison to prison, so if that class is already started, they can't take it. And so when they get out, they don't have the education. I wish, and trying to work with a couple of community partners about this, of how maybe someone in higher ups could make it mandatory that when they get out, that it's mandatory for them to get a GED. Because we have resources out here for them to get a GED and to get it at no cost. But sometimes you have to pull teeth, or a lot of times you have to pull teeth. And if it was at least mandatory for them to attend, that's something they can have under their belt. And then I can maneuver different ways with that because we have unions here that they can do paid apprenticeship while they're learning to get work experience. I can put them in different positions because I'm building employment with different employers as I explain to them why they should hire our clients, how our clients have an advantage over those that are free and that our clients have actually did the work, even though they haven't got paid for it, but they have the experience and being able to sell them on that. Another thing that I'm coming across that is a barrier is that they don't have driver's license and they can't obtain driver's license because of the court fines and fees. And they don't have the money to pay for the court fines and fees. So this is another thing that is on the discussion table of how can we remedy this? How can we make where they can get a license and then we can work towards that. So those life skills, education, and getting a driver's license. Because if they have a driver's license, I can place them in a job. Because I have some jobs that after explaining to them about reentry and from them experiencing our clients, because people in reentry work harder than normal people because they know that they have to prove themselves, and you don't have to worry about a turnover because they're going to stay. If it's a good job, they're going to stay on that job. They're going to prove themselves. They're going to be the best employees you ever had. And I get employers tell me that all the time, and I have no problem. They're like, send me more. So it's just those things that I'm having difficulties with.
Thank you, Renisha. And I think that's a good point in the discussion to move on to our next question in this panel is, how can we overcome these challenges to reduce recidivism? I know we're talking a lot about employers and maybe stigmas that are associated, and we will get into that question after this one. But starting from this point with the challenges that we were talking about before, how can we overcome those to help reduce recidivism? And I will start with Augie again.
I think that reentry is a jigsaw puzzle, and we each have a unique puzzle. There's not one model for everybody that gets out, and there are some that, for whatever circumstances, have very few pieces in their jigsaw puzzle, and they're able to, maybe they have stable employment or some advanced skills or education that they can get into good employment right away. They've got stable housing they can return to. But there's many others that don't have those things. And Stacy brought up, and I think she said, and it's so true, that if the beast of addiction is not under control, then really nothing else is going to matter as far as getting employed and those types of things. So I don't know that there's one answer. I do know that the big pieces are the employment and the housing, mental health, substance abuse, being under control. But I think that it's recognizing from my personal responsibility that I've got things that I've got to deal with. We do release in the same neighborhoods that we went in from. And so we're going back to the same people, places, and things. And unless I have the tools, the mental tools to deal with that and find different relationships and involve myself in other things, I would really find myself challenged to not get back into the same activities that sent me away in the first place. So there's so many different things to deal with. And I think that's where I go back in the beginning. I said, we've got to be willing to ask for help. We've got to be willing to say, whether it's to our case manager, our probation officer, our family, that I'm really struggling with something and I need some help. And I think that's maybe a first really important step to trying to figure out our individual puzzles that we've got to solve.
Thank you, Augie. And Renisha, I'm going to change up this order just a little bit, just to kind of give us a little new freshness here. How can we overcome these challenges to help reduce recidivism based on the challenges that we discussed?
I would say wraparound services where we all as a community, we band as one for our clients. And like Augie said, a lot of our clients don't ask for help, and because they're afraid. So I be pulling teeth. And it takes for them to get comfortable with you. And once they know that they can trust you, they spill everything. So I know what all I'm working with, who all I'm going to. This is what I need you guys to do. Have you done this? And we follow up with each other. Make I guess like a blanket, if you will, if that makes sense, around them, where they feel secure, where they know they're confident that someone has my best interest and that someone is looking for me to succeed. That's where I see a lot of the success comes from, when I build my community partners with probation. Hey, this is going on with this client. I need you to do this. How can we do this? Going to, even with substance abuse, reaching to my community partners in like Reverie Recovery. Hey, this is going on. Can you guys get band here and help with this? And let me know the progress. And I sit down with my clients. This is what we're going to do. This is your plan. And then when you get through with this, you're going to come back to me. I'm going to follow up to make sure you're doing what you need to. I'm still going to keep in touch with you. And what are you doing? How's this going? How was today? You know, like those simple things mean a lot to them. So in order to reduce recidivism, I have a problem saying that word, but in order to reduce it, band together as one, because no one is more important than the other except our clients, to see them succeed. They're the most important. It's not about us. It's about them succeeding and becoming the productive members of society that we know they can be. They just need someone to guide them. They need somebody to hold their hand until they can walk on their own. I hope that makes sense.
Makes complete sense, and I thank you so much. It's very insightful. Melody, at Career Compass in Wyoming, how can we overcome some of these challenges to reduce recidivism in 2023? And I'm looking forward to 2024.
Yeah, and one of the things that one of the panel members brought up was about technology. And being in prison, you don't always have access to all the technology, right? So one of the things through our program that we're highlighting is we're partnering with a company called Premier Virtual, and it's a job fair platform that we can offer inside the prisons. What we found is there isn't a lot of access for that, right? We want to get them access to the employers. We want the employers to be partnering with us and the Department of Corrections. So with that, we're also working on getting tablets and Wi-Fi in the Department of Corrections for that purpose as well. Our Department of Corrections in Wyoming has been phenomenal in this process as we've worked together and looking at these challenges as a team. You know, I think that's something that Renisha really hit on, is it takes everybody, right? We're all part of this and we kind of have to encompass that. And in Wyoming, that's exactly what we're doing. We're a small state with our numbers, which means we know everybody, which on some level is good, right? So we can work together and we can band together and say, this is what's going really well, and this is what we can do to keep it going. So with the Premier Virtual, we now can host job fairs where we're going to start doing those monthly, to where offenders can find out resources in the communities they're going to. They can find out more about the employers that are hiring people that are justice involved. And then also one of the cool features on there as well is that the employers can pre-record their interview questions, and then the offenders can answer those when they are available, and it's not taking up time or causing a hardship on the prisons. We know everyone's short-staffed and getting people in there and getting approvals and stuff. So we want to make sure that this is easy for the offenders to use, it's easy for the employers, and we're not asking the employers to travel across the state just to come to one facility to talk to a handful of them. We want this to be something that we're teaching some soft skills and some hard skills as they're going through this, whether it's through interviewing, with the technology piece. We definitely want to be cutting edge on that, because when somebody's been in for 10 years, technology moves fast. And what it was when they went in is very different from when they come out. And again, like Augie said, I mean, asking somebody to set up their LinkedIn, I mean, that's enough to scare anybody if you've never really heard of LinkedIn or you don't have that technology piece. So we definitely want to work with our participants in our program and really give them the skill sets that they need to be successful in the changing world that we're all in right now. Everything is so digital and everything is so technology driven that they've got to have that to be successful.
Thank you, Melody. And over to Stacy, just to round out this part of the presentation, and I think it's appropriate because we're talking about technology right now. So Stacy, if you could just say, how can we overcome these challenges to reduce recidivism and with your experience?
You know, some of it has to begin with policy changes, whether those policy changes are at a state level or whether it is with an employer, and even all the way back to an insurance company. We also have to stop looking at just that person's conviction. If that individual has served their time, they have completed a parole or probation, or maybe they're still on it, it doesn't mean that they're not going to show up for work every day. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be your rock star employee. It means that they made a mistake at some point in life and they have paid for that mistake. And so instead of focusing on that past, we really need to take a look at who they are today. What skills have they obtained? What soft skills do they have? And then even on the housing side, you know, like I said, my conviction was 20 years ago and I can't rent a home. It doesn't matter where I'm at right now. The answer is no. And we have to remember that individuals like myself, individuals like Augie, we're going right back into the same neighborhoods that everyone else lives in. And we all have the right to live in a safe and secure home. And if we can't be in that home, then all we're doing is increasing that chance of recidivism with new crimes happening in our community. And so if we're really going to focus on a safer community and a secure community, then we have to come together as a community and ensure that we are breaking down those barriers. Augie is hands down one of my favorite people. Persevere, we did a steep and a SWAT last year. And one of the things that we walked away from is we don't do everything perfect. We do a lot of things really, really good, but it takes partners like Augie and Second Opportunity to come up and to provide those resources that we don't provide. We work really close with the American Job Center and our workforce boards across the state of Tennessee, because there are resources there that we don't offer that they can offer. And we've got to come together as one. And we've got to make these policy changes. We've got to, we're going to have to make a difference. And it can't just be one of us. It's got to be all of us.
Excellent. Thank you, Stacey. And one more question for the panel before we go into a few questions that I put together and with my team for each panelist. What are a few best practices that for employers, for working with employers, that folks on this call can take back if they're in the reentry industry or any industry within workforce to help those who are reentering the workforce? And I'll start with Rainisha.
Some of the best practices, federal bonding, the work tax credit, and a lot of employers don't know that at Career Source, we offer transitional jobs, and that's a piece for reentry. Transitional jobs is where we pay 100% of the client's wages, but the company gets to train them the way they want to. They're coming in with no skills, but you get to train them the way you want to. So that means for 3 months, you get to train them the way you want to, and you don't have to pay. So that's the training costs that you are normally paid to pay them when they first start, we're covering it. So we're saving you money. And if after those 3 months, you feel as though they need more training, we pay up to 75% of their wages on OJT training, because now they have some skills, so we can transfer over to on the job training. So with on-the-job training, you get to continue to train them, and we pay up to 75%. So if we pay 75%, you just got 6 months worth of training and you only had to pay 25%. And with the first 3 months of transitional job, they are covered under the state of Florida for workman's comp. So if they get hurt on your job, we cover them. And a lot of employers, they're like, wow, you get an employee that is tailor-made to what you want. You tailor-make them to the job that you want them to do at really no cost. 25%, you can't beat that.
Thank you. And back over to Melody. So what are a few best practices that you see or that you've encountered over your time and with your experience to help employers who are seeking to hire those who are reentering the workforce?
Yeah, I think Renisha hit on the first two that I had with the tax credit program and the federal bonding. I think that that's a huge piece of this with businesses that just don't know that that's out there. They don't understand how to use it. They haven't been familiar with it. So that's part of what we want to do in DWS is to continue having that conversation as we partner with employers that we know will hire justice involved individuals. Another one that we're working on in our program is partnering with the Department of Corrections, because they have many opportunities in there through their industries program for these individuals to learn different skill sets and gain a lot more experience. So they've started a micro-credentialing program that's kind of like the pre-apprenticeship before pre-apprenticeship. And what we want to do with our employers is to ask them, what are the skill sets that are missing in your workforce, and how can we provide that prior to release? Because that's the big key that we're finding is that, you know, DOC does really great things and we're doing really great things on the outside, but we need to come together to make that a smoother transition. And how can we partner with them? So that's a big piece of how we're facilitating our program, is really leaning into what they have and then asking the employers that we're working with, what is it that you're looking for, so that we can also have some tailor-made employees right there, because I think that's an underserved workforce that we have a lot of employers going, well, we need people. Well, great, we have them. What are you looking for, and how can we get them out to your business? Because they are probably going to be some of your best workers. They're eager, they're ready, and they know it's hard. They know that they have to overcome that stigma as well. And so we definitely are partnering with our businesses to work with our Department of Corrections as well to make sure that those skill sets are being implemented prior to release.
Thank you, Melody. And back to Stacy. Stacy, what are a few in your opinion and with your experience and your insight, what are a few best practices for employers seeking to hire those who are reentering the workforce?
There are so many individuals that have not been tapped into, that have amazing skills, and even education. I think we as a society have this thought of what someone who has been arrested looks like, right? But we don't stop to realize that there are CEOs and CFOs and master's level individuals that are incarcerated. And so if I could tell an employer how to change anything in their organization, it is to change their fair practice hiring. Because when I interview for a job, I'm not there because of my background or not having a background. I am there because of the skills that I have that is going to be a perfect fit for your company. And so I can see, because there are a lot of positions where you cannot work somewhere because of your past, but start by looking at that person's experience. Start looking at whether or not they are a fit for your organization, even on a culture side. And don't let that past determine whether you hire them or not. It's the same with someone with a college degree versus 10 years of experience, right? Sometimes you go with the person with 10 years of experience because the college graduate doesn't have it. It's the same with someone with a background. go with that experience. Stop looking at what they've done in the past and look at what they can do right now. And I promise you, you will start to fill those positions that you have not been able to fill in a long time if you just tap into that other talent.
Excellent. Thank you, Stacey. And Augie, just if you could, just for a moment or two, expand upon what the panelists have spoken about here with best practices for working with employers.
I think the employer needs to make a commitment, but it's no different than the commitment they make to the rest of their workforce. So just because my background is documented, there are people at work that have trauma, that have other issues, that have other struggles. And so we make a commitment to, as a fair chance employer. But I would say a couple of things that I've taken with me as I've done the work that I've done since release. I think it's important that the employer provides clear expectations. And that's no different than for any other employee, but just really clear expectations with a willingness to answer questions or clarify those expectations. Second thing is, and I see employers get this backwards, but structure is good. When we release structure is good, I had a hamburger every Wednesday for lunch for more than a decade. I stood up out of my bunk every day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So to get a job and be told you get 30 minutes for lunch, take it whenever you want. So I probably wouldn't take lunch with those instructions. So I think structure is a good thing to have. And then again, no different than investing in other employees, but the way that we do it is maybe provide some mentors, and not just for people with backgrounds, but people that are becoming reacclimated. What about the person that's coming back out of the armed forces that's been out of society for a while, or somebody that hasn't been working for other reasons that's coming back in? So offer mentoring programs. And one of the things I've seen is that people like to serve as a mentor, helping others to be a part of the culture that they're working in.
Thanks, Augie. I think that the mentorship part is really great, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think having a great mentor is super important. I want to go into another question on Slido. So if you would, please join me one more time here. I know we got about 15 minutes before this presentation ends, but take your phone real quick or go to Slido and just go ahead and give me a scan right here on your screen and choose what the biggest challenge is in your area where you're at when providing services for those reentering the workforce. It could be more than one. Somebody has already voted for that, so it could be none of these. But please just go ahead and take a second to submit that. And while you're doing that, we'll give about 1 second. And Augie, while this is being filled out by our folks who are watching from across the nation and probably the world, the next question I'm going to ask is about financial literacy. Why is it so important to have financial literacy when reentering the workforce?
One of our courses is specific to, we call it Path to Financial Freedom, and it's specific to financial literacy. And part of that is on lived experience. So I struggled in the very beginning to get a bank account because of my background. And, a bank account is admission. It's the admission ticket into the everyday economy. And it really would be a red flag for an employer that says we do direct deposit. That's the way we do things here, which is not uncommon at all. And I don't have a bank account for my paycheck to be sent to. And then when I went to try to acquire an automobile, the guy told me, "Augie, you don't have bad credit. You're a ghost. You're not." Those were his exact words. "You're not even in the system." So I think it's important to understand what the challenges are related to having a background, related to being out of the mainstream economy for a period of time. And the best way to combat those challenges is knowledge. And so I think it's really important when somebody is reentering to understand what credit is, to understand how to get a bank account open, to understand the difference between leasing a car and purchasing a car, those types of things.
Augie, thank you so much. And we actually had a special segment with Augie for our Second Chance Month. So if you get a chance, check out our social media and you can see, or our blog on our website, geographicsolutions.com, and you can see a segment that we filmed with Augie that goes into a little more detail. To Stacey, describe how Persevere is affecting change by not only providing technology skills, but working with technology and helping folks to get acclimated with technology.
So I have a favorite quote that that kind of supports us in the efforts that we have, and it is, the most dangerous person in the world is a person without hope. And so Persevere is, our mission is, one, to reduce recidivism, 2, to reduce mass incarceration, 3 is to provide workforce development training in a technology sector that is going to give an individual hope. And so we not only teach front-end development, full stack development, but we've expanded our program. We expanded it because a lot of individuals coming through our program are not a software developer, they are not a coder, their brains do not think that way. So we expanded it to project management, data analytics, A+ certifications with tech support. We, again, with Augie, what we realized was there's a lot of individuals that don't want to go through a technology path at all, and so we have partners that have alternative pathways, so that we can take some of the transferable skills from our program and transfer them over to other organizations like Augie's. But at the same time that we're teaching that technology, we also have individuals that are sitting down in front of a computer with Windows 10 for the very first time in 20 years. We have individuals that have never turned on a computer, never adjusted the size of a monitor, moved a mouse, or touched a keyboard. And that fear, and Augie can probably attest to this, that fear of walking out those doors and seeing things you've never seen before, like the blue light that lights up on a Bluetooth, or the fact that you can put your hand under the car door handle and it just opens up on its own, and there's a button that moves your window blinds, right? There's so many different things that have changed in a very short period of time. And so not only do we teach them technology for employment, but we also teach them what is the Internet of Things and how does it all tie together. Because the worst feeling in the world is to walk out of those doors, one, scared to death, and because you don't know, right? Where am I going to live? What am I going to do? How am I going to employ, how am I going to feed myself and reunite with my family? But we had a gentleman who walked out on work release and saw the little blue light in someone's ear and freaked out and was like, I don't want to do work release anymore. And so we need to make sure that we're explaining what technology is. Even down to, now your bank card, you don't even insert it. You just tap it and you go, or you use your phone. And so, like I said, not only are we teaching technology, workforce training, but we're also teaching what is the Internet of Things and providing those transferable skills so that they can transfer over into a apprenticeship program like Augie at Second Opportunity has.
Thank you, Stacy. And as a digital marketer, I'm also still trying to figure out what is the Internet of Things, but I hope to find out soon. And Melody, could you just share a little bit about, in your experience, like working with your program in Wyoming, for somebody who's watching who is just like, I need some help with some advice is how I build a better bridge between a reentry program and an agency or a Department of Corrections. What is one piece of advice that you could give that person to help them in their job?
Yeah, and it's such a good question because it's going to come down to building those relationships. Department of Corrections is sometimes a tough cookie to get into, depending on what state you're in. And if you don't have a stamp of approval, they're probably not going to be ready to talk. So before you get involved into wanting to build that program, I would suggest starting to have those conversations. When we started with our grant at DWS, we started asking good questions, staying curious, asking what the needs are of Department of Corrections so that we could work together, because it's an ownership on both parts. We definitely didn't want on our end just to be so heavily workforce services and then only 10% on Department of Corrections side. So we've worked with them, we've kept them in the loop, we've asked for their input, we've asked for what works and makes sense for them, because what works for us at DWS and workforce services may not be the same on the inside, right? They have a lot more non-negotiables than we do. And to take that into consideration when we're having those conversations and having them help build this. That's what's worked really well for us is we've sat along with them, we've kept them in the loop, we've had the right people at the table. I always suggest starting at the top. Make sure you get the directors involved, those that have the power to make those decisions, because that's what's going to make the difference in the long run and make this a lasting program. I definitely have been a part of different things where maybe it's a flash in the pan. Reentry, we want that to be a sustaining force in our state and for the people that get to participate in it. So build those relationships, have those conversations, get them at the table, stay curious, ask them good questions on what it means for them and what that looks like and how you guys can partner together.
Renisha, just to finish this up, and I know we have about 8 minutes left, and I want to be cognizant of time, but if you could just expand a little bit on something unique that is going on at Career Source of the Palm Beach counties and with folks who are returning to the workforce, and maybe if you have a success story to share as well.
I actually have a lot of success stories, but I will start with the most recent one. One of the unique things about what's going on at Career Source, I love the place that I work at. And I love that I can go to different departments to get what I need for my clients. So like, for example, and a lot of people don't know that Career Source is made of different entities. Like we have the SNAP and TANF that does the compliance for food stamps. So a lot of times our clients get sanctions and they don't know why they got sanctions. And most of their sanctions is due to technology. They didn't know that they had to get on the computer and register on EF and do what the letter that was sent to them by food stamps by Department of Children and Families to sign up for EF to go in and take the test and stuff. So I can go, instead of having to get on their phone and wait hours for someone to pick up, I can walk to one of my counterparts and snap and say, hey, this is my client. He got such and such going on. Can you look it up and tell me what I need to do to help him? And then they send me what I need to do. And like a lot of you guys said, technology is a problem. So we sit there and we go through the whole thing and get them set up, and the sanction is lifted. It's automatically lifted. My counterparts are able to do that. Or if they're having a problem where signing up for a vocational trade or they're missing something, I can go to my WIOA department that does the grants for vocational trade. Hey, this is my client. He doesn't know what he's missing or she doesn't know what she's missing. They'll send it to me. We'll get everything situated. And it goes there. I love that this is a family environment and we all work as one. And even with my youth defenders that are participating in the youth program, we have worked hand in hand to make sure, they're ready and that they can go through the program. And then when they come out, let's start finding you something to do. I love that aspect that we can all pull together and come up with something. Or if a client has came in that's reentry that came through one of them and they're like, hey, they need help, can you help them? So it's the working as a whole and learning the different things that Career Source offers for our clients. They're not just one thing that's offered. Like everybody is doing reentry. And a success story, I just recently, it was posted, one of my clients, he went to prison at the age of 14 and he was released last year. He was released out of prison. So he went at 14, got out. He's an amazing guy. He's working right now, making $21 an hour. By the end of this year, he'll be making $25 an hour. He's got his permit for his driver's license. He's also in college pursuing to get a paralegal associate's degree. So that's one of my success stories. I have so many, but I'm so proud of him and the work he's doing. And then after he completes with the degree, we'll start working on towards something else.
It's incredible. Thank you, Renisha. We have 4 minutes left. I promised that I would take some questions from the audience, and I just want to go back to one that was submitted by Jessica Bird at almost pretty much the onset of this presentation, and we'll try to fit a few more in here and be super respectful of your time because I know we're coming up on 1 p.m. here. But Jessica asks, if this applies, do you have a recommendation for someone, or recommendations for someone who has lost their master plumber certification due to lack of renewal during incarceration? Are there any organizations you know of that could help with reestablishing his license or their license? And that really could be for anybody who wants to weigh in on this, if you know, and if not, that's okay as well. Okay.
I can quickly answer. Sorry, I was waiting to see if anybody else was going to say anything. I didn't want to talk over anybody. I know for workforce services, we always encourage people to come in and work with one of our partner programs. We have the WIOA program, which is the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, that can help people get certifications. It can help them get trainings and things like that. So that's a federal program that's across all the states. So I would encourage them to work with their local workforce, maybe and partner with that program and see if that's something they can. There's eligibility requirements. There's a lot of things that go into that, but I would suggest going to your local workforce and asking about that WIOA program.
Awesome, thank you, Melody. And I think this guest has already left, but Cynthia Holloman had asked, how do you convince employers that reentry individuals have paid for their mistakes and need to move forward? Is there any advice that you can give just that could help for somebody who's listening and needs that advice?
I'll jump in really quick on that one. If you do work with your local workforce development boards or even your state boards, a lot of times there are employers on those boards that are fair chance hires, or fair chance employers. And a lot of times they can help advocate too, and even give some data behind the outcomes of hiring individuals with a background. So a lot of times we'll pull in one of those board members if we have an organization that just is pushing back against us, for them to be able to tell their success stories in hiring anyone with a background. The other thing that I would do is exactly what was said earlier. Talk to them about the bonding. Talk to them about the OJT program. Talk to them about the transition program, and let them know that there are resources out there that will reduce some of that risk that they may be looking at. And just let them know they're no different than the rest of us. I mean, you're taking a chance on everyone, no matter who it is.
Another good thing that I recently started using, because I have to go to the prisons too, is a portfolio showing the skills that they're learning. And once an employer sees the skills that they're actually learning, that, hey, this is what I need, that's a good way to get the clients into working with them. And then to learn, and knowing that everything that we're covering, what we're prepared to do to back this client up, that showing that we believe in them so much, we're putting our money where our mouth is.
Thank you. Again, thank you so much. And we're coming up on time. We just have about a minute left here, but I can't thank you enough for helping me pull this panel together. Stacy, Augie, Melody, Renisha, it has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights, and I know that the audience does as well. I've seen it in the comments, and again, I just appreciate your time so much. Thank you everybody for tuning into this edition of Pathways to Employment, State of Reentry. We do have a conference coming up. I just have to make a plug for that because it's going to be awesome, and it's going to be in October, the 16th through the 19th. It's the 2023 Workforce Technology Conference. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.